Hey y'all, that was getting a little bit long, so I decided to make this into a two-part video. So this will be part C, so all the stuff involving radicals will be in this part. So for here, what we're learning is first kind of how to simplify when we have these radicals. And basically what this is saying is if I have square root of negative b, instead of kind of using that square root negative 1 that's really awkward, again, we're just going to call that I and then say root b. So instead of having something like this negative square root of negative 7, to call attention to this, rather than saying it is the square root of negative 1, we're going to say I root 7. That's simple. For square root of 25, so square root of 25, or sorry, negative 25, square root of 25 is 5, and then we would still have that root negative 1 there, and again, we're just calling attention to that by saying I. If you think about where you would put the X, that's kind of where the I tends to go, and that said, sometimes books aren't consistent on that. For me, I usually put it after numbers, same I would write 5x, not x5, that would look weird. And I usually don't write square root 7 with an X after, because it's hard to tell if it's underneath the radical. So that's kind of the same reason for putting it in front this time. Here you'll see I'll end up putting it between after the number and kind of before the radical. So this is, first off, it's a negative because there's a negative sign out front. And then it's going to involve an I because there's a radical, a negative under the radical. And then for that 24, I am going to think of that as a 4 times a 6. And so square root of 4, that would bring out a 2. So I'll just throw that in front there. And then we leave behind root 6. So the same exact way you would reduce root 24, break it into the 4 and the 6, take out the 2, leave the 6. Everything's the same, it just happened to be a negative number in front, and because of this negative underneath, every time we see that, right, we get that I notation. Okay, so we're about to head into the land of addition and subtraction, and multiplication. And when we have multiplication, something I need to call attention to. So say I have square root negative 1 times square root negative 1. So that could come out a couple of ways. If I go square root negative 1 times negative 1 and I use the AB property, that comes out root 1 and I get 1. But if I think of this as negative 1 to the 1/2 to the 1/2, then I have negative 1 to the 1, which is negative 1. So that's a problem that I can make this come out to two different answers. And the issue is with this property, A and B have to be greater than 0. So if we have problems like what's coming up with the negative under the root, we have to write it in that I notation first. And what that does is then makes A and B positive numbers, and then it's valid to do that math. So the key to these, get I out of the expression, or get it out of the negative under the radical into the I notation, and then you're safe to proceed. So for this first one, we've got square root negative 27 plus square root negative 12. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite that so I can see my perfect squares a little bit easier. So I'm going to think of it as a 9 times a 3 for that 27, because I like the 9 because it's going to work. 12, 4 goes into that. So that one I'll write as 4 times 3. And you can kind of see there's my like terms coming up. So square root of 9 would bring out a 3. And so it used to be this would just be 3 root 3. Now it's 3I root 3. That's the only difference, is now it has that complex part. And then here we are bringing out a 2I. And then the same way, if I have 3 of something plus 2 of something, I have 5 of those somethings. That's all that's going on. We're just collecting up our like terms. So I now have 5 I root 3s. This is the one where I was saying if you multiply first and make that a positive, you will come up with the right answer with the backward sign. So careful to simplify I first. So, there's a couple of ways to do it. Let's do this. This is better. I'm just going to write this as I root 18, and then I'm going to write this one as I root 8. And then if you go 18 times 8, well, actually, let's go I times I, so we don't forget that, I squared. And then 18 times 8, that comes out to 144, so that actually works out pretty good because it's 12. So in the notes, I started simplifying and went, oh, look, well, this turns out really nice because it's 144. So anyhow, I squared, that's negative 1 times 12, or negative 12. And you can see if I just multiplied straight away, I would have gotten root 144, and it would come out positive 12. Again, this math isn't real. This is the correct math. And then here's the same idea, but now we're just involving FOIL. So I think what I thought seemed the easiest way, and you could simplify first or not. To me, I just went with, I'm going to write the I out front, and then I'll kind of deal with simplifying the radicals after I've done the FOIL. And you could do it before or after. It works both ways. But we do need to get that into I notation. So I rewrote it like that. And now I'll do out my FOIL. So if I have a negative 2 for negative 10, and on the outside I'm going to get minus 5i root 50. On the inside I'm going to get minus 2i root 18. And then here on the last I'll get positive and negative, so negative I squared. And then 18 times 50 is 900, which actually ends up working out pretty good. And then here, so this is negative 10 minus 5i 50. This is going to be, I'm going to think of this as 25 times 2 here in a second. And then I'll do a step with that. 2i, I'm going to think of that 18 as 9 times 2 in just a second. I squared, that's negative 1, so negative and negative, so I'm going to rewrite that as a plus from there, and then square root 900 is 30, so we can get that part together. And then on the next line, we could do negative 10 and 30, so it's going to be, because those are like terms, so that'll be 20, minus 5i, square root 25 would bring out a 5, root 2. Here we'd have minus 2, square root 9 brings out a 3, root 2. Remember that went with this. And now cleaning that up, 5 and 5 are 25, I root 2, and minus 6, I root 2. Okay, and then combining like terms, I'm just going minus 25 minus 6 for minus 31.